Hi everyone, welcome back to the Better Community Podcast. Today we are talking about something really interesting about sustainability and leadership. I'm excited to have Alba with us. She's a sustainability and public affairs expert with over, I think, 14 years. Am I right?
Yes,
Yes,
14.
14 years of experience helping businesses building sustainability strategies, navigate ESG, and stay ahead of future trends. She's worked with different companies, governments, and organizations to create real change, and she's currently a sustainability and public affairs strategist at Sustainability and Co. She will explain more about their experience as well later on, of course. And in this episode, we'll talk about what makes a great sustainability leader, how businesses can prepare for the future, and why uh, collaboration and mentorship matter. So let's start diving into our questions. Alma, welcome to this podcast. I'm really happy to have you here. And for kind of introduction, I want to ask you to add any info that you think it's really important to add to my introduction about yourself.
Sure. Well, then, first of all, thank you so much for having me. Um, Maybe interesting to add is a little bit about my personal background. So I'm actually coming from Canada, and I've been living here in the Netherlands for many years. So I understand very much what it's like to be coming from one country, studying in another country, and then finding a place for yourself to work in a foreign country. So I think perhaps that's also an interesting add.
Fabulous. And during our conversation, in case if you think is there any specific point related to this experience, please let us know because as you know, also some of our audiences and our target market are international professionals, knowledge workers, even international students. And as you mentioned, you had the same experience and now you already settled everything in the Netherlands. So let's start with your personal journey because you mentioned something about yourself. What inspired you to work in sustainability and public affairs?
So I ended up doing my master's degree in Rotterdam, so here in the Netherlands, right after the 2008 2009 global economic crash. And while I was already studying my international business degree, I thought there must be a more responsible way to be doing business than it was being done at that moment. And so I chose to study strategic management because I love big picture, sort of high level thinking. Now, upon graduating from the Rotterdam School of Management, I didn't feel very excited about the sort of traditional route and path that seemed to be put in front of many of my fellow students, and that was to go into management consulting. And somehow, you know, advising large companies on how to earn more profits just didn't really speak to me at that time. And so my interest was more in what can business do and what can business achieve and provide for society. And that's where I started my journey. My first role was at Royal DSM, working on sustainability topics. So, really working on being at the intersection of businesses and society. And what is that role? What does that mix look like? How do companies work with nonprofits or governments to try to get things done with a joint agenda? And so, my first role at DSM was as public private partnership manager. DSM was the world's largest vitamin and mineral producer at the time. And so they had an interest in helping fortify foods, making foods more nutritious, with organizations like the World Food Program and UNICEF, who were in charge of, feeding people at the base of the pyramid in emergency settings. And so trying to make that food as nutritious as possible was sort of the mission of the partnerships that we had together. So my role there was really being kind of a spider in the web, working with, our food scientists or our finance people or our HR people to engage our employees. And then also having this external role, which was about advocacy and talking about the importance of nutrition to donors like the Dutch government or the Canadian government who might be interested in finding projects where they can get the best, let's say, ROI on their investment. So we tried to position nutrition in that way. And after that role, I moved on to doing other more general sustainability projects within the company. And then as a next step, I went to the antibiotic business of DSM, which later became Centriant Pharmaceuticals, and I got to lead the sustainability and public affairs work there, creating a new strategy for sustainability with a focus on relevant topics like antimicrobial resistance. So AMR is what happens when antibiotics no longer work, which you can imagine is a critical issue if you're an antibiotic manufacturer, but also for global public health. So that's always been my passion, is how to work on issues that are not only important for business, but for society at large.
Great. And looking back to your career and your journey in this specific field, what's one lesson about making an impact in sustainability that's really stuck with you so far?
Making an impact in sustainability is really about bringing people along. The truth is, many people are at different stages of understanding of sustainability and the role of business in society. There's not a consensus at this moment. And so the way that you address, each individual's interests and issues, differs from person to person. And so being able to meet people where they are and position sustainability, whether it has an economic focus, environmental, social focus, you need to be able to translate that in a way that really speaks to an individual person. And that can be a challenge, but ultimately that's how you unlock things.
And can we consider this challenge as one of the biggest challenge for leaders who are trying to integrate sustainability into their businesses, or you can mention some other challenges as well?
Yeah, so that's definitely a challenge that you have to bring along kind of a diverse group of people. All different functions, all different levels of the company need to be brought on board. It's a sort of transformational change project, and it's not one to be taken lightly. But another challenge that sustainability leaders face is that a lot of the issues we're working on are very long term. If you're working on a topic like climate change or, other resource constraints, water, minerals, etc., or also social issues. These are not things that necessarily neatly line up with a company's financial cycle or even, the tenure of the CEO or the board. These are very long-term issues. So trying to make them relevant um, when short-termism, let's be honest, right now is very much leading. It's hard to make those long-term issues fit neatly into a kind of short-termism agenda.
That's a nice point. Speaking of long-term issues, we can consider future or futures in our way of thinking about coping with challenges. And it means the leaders need different type of maybe a skill set to cope with those challenges. I mean, long-term challenges and issues. What specific skills do you think leaders who are busy in that specific area often overlook when it comes to, for example, specifically sustainability?
Um, I think that leaders in companies might tend to have quite an inner looking approach, and are busy, maybe with the accounting or the finances or other functions of the business. And they might not be as skilled or as well versed in looking at the world around them. And I think that at this moment, with all of the uncertainty and even chaos that we see around us, leaders need to now start taking much more of an outside in view than they've ever had to do. Now it's not sufficient to just know your direct supply chain, your customer, your corner of the industry. That's simply not going to be good enough, I think, for companies to survive they're going to have a much, much broader view outside and be able to, um, expect and mitigate different changes that are going to be coming at them.
I want to jump to maybe next area we want to talk about. We both had the same experience of joining a program in Groningen about futures literacy featuring Real Miller. And over there, I can remember that we also had a short discussion about different stakeholders in terms of whatever we are doing. I mean, everything could be kind of stakeholder and everyone. And you mentioned something I was thinking at that time that maybe it's a good idea to mention that maybe one of the main challenges in sustainability efforts are how we can engage different kind of stakeholders. Then, of course, it's a little bit complicated, but at the same time, it could be really important. But let's talk about futures literacy. I know that you already engaged a lot. I mean, compared to other people I know in futures literacy. You joined futures literacy intensive program last year, 2024. Also, you joined Dubai Future Forum. You tried to focus on kind of application of futures literacy in your current endeavors and things like that. So let's ask you, how can businesses use this framework and this approach to prepare for sustainable challenges?
Yeah, so, so, that experience that we went through together, the Futures Literacy Intensive program for me was incredibly eye-opening, it gave me so much of a broader context, of the world that we're operating in. As a sustainability person, I think we tend to already be operating in a pretty broad context, and working on a number of issues, but for me, that course was really, a big milestone, and w what I think is necessary is to bring that kind of thinking to the broader sustainability community. These are people that are trying to make a difference, trying to make an impact. Right now, in a moment where there's just so much uncertainty and it feels like so many things are actually scaling back. So I think that bringing those futures literacy and futures thinking tools to the sustainability community is important to open their minds and remind people that nothing in the future is set. All of the futures are still possible. And we should not feel like we're being, railroaded into one specific direction that one leader or tech billionaire wants us to go. There's no need to accept that. And so I think highlighting that message to people, to open their minds and still be hopeful, is something that I'm really excited about and really committed to doing.
Nice. And you know that at Benno Community now we are focusing on SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises, and trying to apply futures literacy approaches for helping them to cope with the challenges. Because as you mentioned, sometimes SMEs are focusing on short-term issues and just daily activities and things like that. My question is, how can SMEs use futures literacy to stay competitive as sustainability also sustainability expectations also grow, because I know that you now work on the intersection between these two areas.
Yeah. I think I think futures literacy is important to teach, folks working in SMEs at an early part in their business why the outside world is so important and why working with the future or futures is critical for their business. In order for people to stay agile, in order for people to stay open minded, in order for them to be creative and innovative, it's important to have a broad view. And if you can integrate that into your company at an early stage, I think it will unlock a lot of creativity and different thinking and a lot of resilience when times start to get tough, rather than shutting down, retreating, and not knowing what to do. Using the futures tools with your team can help maybe when you get stuck. So that's why I think it's important, not just for large companies, but also for smaller companies who might not always have the luxury to be thinking about that because let's be honest, they're doing the sort of bread and butter work to get their product, to get their service out there. But it's really important for them to take that time to reflect.
Fabulous. And in terms of thinking about a future or futures, what big sustainability challenges do you think businesses should prepare for in the next few years? I know I don't want to ask you to predict something. I just want to ask you to share your imagination.
Hmm. I think that there's a great deal of under preparation at the moment. I think most companies are not prepared and are not aware of maybe the linkages of all the different challenges that we're facing. Climate change is fairly, would say, well understood in many parts of the world and has, let's say, a distinct advantage in terms of being more advanced in people's minds. But issues like other, scarcity of other resources, issues with plastics, issues with income inequality, all of these other topics are not yet as advanced in people's minds, in policy, in business targets. And I think there's a lack of understanding of what all those topics will and all those issues will have as an impact. And also the intersection of all these different issues, I think, is not broadly known. In short, I think there's a long list of issues that companies might need to prepare to face pretty quickly.
Good. So you also worked in different industries and cultures, which means you have extensive experiences of working with different people with different backgrounds, globally and maybe locally in the Netherlands. And also, as you mentioned, you already had moving to a new, different country, settling everything, studying there, working there, and things like that. What have you learned about leading sustainability efforts in that specific multicultural, diverse settings?
Yeah. Well, maybe I can speak first to working in the Netherlands and then also having a global aspect to the roles. I mean, working in the Netherlands is very different from working in Canada. The culture is different in that, Canadians are known to be very polite. We tend to say sorry a lot. And the Dutch are known for their directness. I'm sure you've come across that as well yourself. And it definitely took some time to get used to the fact that people are not trying to be rude. It's nothing personal that you have done as an individual, but this is simply how they communicate and this is how they behave. And so, as a Canadian coming to the Netherlands, there is definitely a culture shock when it comes to that level of directness versus, I think, the Canadian indirectness and this, need to not embarrass people or put them on the spot. So that was something that I really needed to get used to. And on the other hand, what's great about it is that you really then know where you stand with people. Things are much more in the open, people speak their minds. And so there's not, a great deal of mystery around how people feel about a specific idea, or maybe they say it's good, but they don't think it's good. So in that sense, I think there's, a great positive side to it. And probably I've adopted a lot of that Dutch directness over the years as well. In terms of the global focus, so what I've seen in terms of, communicating sustainability messages in our different, country offices around the world is that people will care about very different things, whether it's in Africa or India or the United States. And when you're communicating sustainability topics, it's critical to frame it and use local examples. So I remember being in DSM's South African office talking about sustainability, and many of the team there, the employees at the factory, didn't really connect to the word sustainability. But when I framed it as, a threat to the big five, the big five South African animals that are, some nearing extinction. When you frame it as about their local, flora and fauna animals, all of a sudden, that connects much better, that people understand that their own landscapes and creatures are under threat. So I think it's really critical to be mindful of, those local differences, and doing so means you can communicate your message much better with people.
Nice and great points, which means intercultural competency or intercultural communication skills could be really important because it helps you to, as you mentioned, engage people with different point of views. So, in terms of continuing your points, what makes a great sustainability leader, and are there key traits that stand out? Because as you know, in our community and also in audiences, there are some people or many people are living, working, studying in the Netherlands, and they already started to engage with this specific area. And maybe they can learn some points related this.
Yeah. I think, a sustainability leader needs to have a lot of patience, I would say. This is not, a linear journey that we're on, as we can see, I think, very clearly in this moment. So I think understanding that, this is something for the long haul, understanding the history of the sustainability movement, but also studying other movements is very critical. How do transitions work? These are not mysteries. It's not mystical thinking of how this works, but there are paths as to how you get, large parts of society on board with a mission, and there are social tipping points at around 25% or so. If you can get that number of people on board with the topic, you can go much quicker. So I think really understanding human behavior and history can give us a lot of insights, um, indeed, and that great deal of patience, because this is not short-term work, despite us being in a short-term world.
In shaping future sustainability leaders, what's the role of mentorship?
I think it definitely does matter, um, to have, strong leaders you can look up to, role models you can look up to. As I mentioned, especially in this time where there's great uncertainty, a younger person, in their first career step might be quite worried, about the future of sustainability, or the futures of sustainability right now. And so being able to talk to people who have been in the field for, I don't know, 20, 30 years, can give a lot of context and can restore that hope that, hey, this has happened before. There are lots of steps backward, and then we keep moving forward. So I think that's really critical. And because this work is not easy, within a company, sometimes it feels like you're swimming against the current, and so having a manager or a leader that looks out for you, that can help you navigate these waters, is super critical. I think, just to maintain focus and, maintain focus on the mission.
So, following this point, you know that Benno community is a community-driven initiatives. At least I'm trying to focus on developing Benno community as a community-driven initiative, which means that mindset. I mean, gathering people around same values and also try to connect with each other to bring more value, do more with less, something like that is really important. We consider mentorship, and also we think that mindset, I mean, community driven mindset towards the future challenges could be really important. My question is, in terms of futures, what do you think about bringing more values based on community driven approaches?
Okay, within the sustainability community.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would definitely be important, especially now. The sustainability community, is a broad tent. It's a broad group of people. It can be people with, an environmental science background or a social background, folks working in NGOs or policy or big companies. So it's a very broad group. And there isn't a, sustainability professional designation. We don't have a, like engineers. So it's, you know, there's a lot of commonality between people, I think mostly linked to the mission that we're all trying to serve. And I think the more that we can give this community the space to gather, build, grow, support, reinforce each other, I think the better, because this community needs to thrive and we need to depend on each other and learn from each other.
So, and do you have any specific advice or suggest how people can navigate their journey in sustainability in terms of finding mentorship opportunities, joining any specific community, or any opportunity for learning more in terms of the knowledge, skills, the things like that?
Yeah. So, I mean, luckily there are a lot of people active in this area. And so there are, for instance, via LinkedIn, there are many sustainability professionals groups that are very active. So simply searching that there, I think is a great resource. There's a ton of free courses as well, that you can find, whether on, YouTube or Coursera. So I think there's no shortage of content for people who are interested to look for it, even for free. So I think if people are interested, they should, yeah, just check it out.
I might forgot something to ask or miss something, or you maybe wants to mention or stress on any specific points as a last words. I'm
Yeah.
all yours to.
Yeah, so I think it goes back to, how can the sustainability community really start to use more futures thinking in our work, and to start seeing the world as a broader system with all interconnecting parts? Because I think we've been using a lot of linear thinking. So as a sustainability leader, you might say, okay, we need to reduce our use of water in a company. And you might say, okay, should we do it by 8% or 10% or 12%, and often that's a function of how much it costs. What is the capex the company needs to put forward? What might the management team agree to, trying to balance, we can't be ambitious on every single target. Where do we want to focus? Where do we want to be leaders on? And I think, that linear thinking of, okay, should we reduce by 10% here, 5% there? It's not connected to the broader system where we see, water scarcity over the next coming years. And so I think we need to really step back as a sustainability community and really think about how our work is, helping or even detracting from the broader system around us, and try to break out from this very short term view and have a much, much broader systems view and futures view of the work that we're actually doing. And I think that's going to be the next step. And yeah, that's where we need to focus our energy on. It's actual, real impact.
Thank you. So before wrap up the things in this episode, I just wanted to mention, because we already talked about futures literacy, about our experiences at Futures Literacy Intensive Program 2024. A few days ago, I heard that the next Futures Literacy Intensive Program in Groningen will organize on May, which means those who are listening to this episode and maybe they are interested to learn more about futures literacy, it's a great opportunity to follow and maybe join. So, thank you, Alba. Appreciate your time. This has been a great conversation. I enjoyed, and you shared so much nice points and also hints, tips, and the things like that about leadership, sustainability, and how business can stay ahead in that area. Thank you for being here. If it's fine for you, also, we can share your LinkedIn on the description of this episode. Then people who are interested to learn more or follow you, you can follow you on LinkedIn. Specifically, now you are busy with initiatives related to sustainability. Maybe there are some rooms for collaboration as well. I think you are interested, you and your team, right?
Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. And for those who are interested to listen to our other episodes, we publish this episode, of course, in different platforms. And over there, they have access to other episodes. They can listen, subscribe, share, and leave a review. And hopefully, these conversations could be helpful for them to learn about leadership, sustainability, futures literacy, future of work, and whatever we are talking about. Do you have any extra point to share with us?
No, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you again, and bye.